At heart, the hero's journey is about elevating in consciousness and growing in a very organic way, which involves these circular peaks and troughs and also embodying something that is going to help the wider world. Actualization is not just about you achieving a reward, it is about you sharing that reward and that elixir with your wider community back in the ordinary world, elevating the consciousness of your community. And I'll show you how Simone Biles did this in that documentary, or how the story was told. And I really do think that it's a really great example of how to tell a story in a way that elevates and expands people. A masterclass inside the Art of Memoir, exploring the archetypes in storytelling, conscious heroes, and how we tell stories that elevate and uplift. So I'm using the Simone Biles documentary that came out to illustrate how the hero's journey is used in each stage. Before we dive in, you will get a lot more from this presentation if you have my free guide to the hero's journey. You can download it immediately. It's right here for you via the link. How I saw Simone Biles embodying this in that documentary, it was told really beautifully. I really love the fact that documentary was shared before she had her comeback in this year's Olympics, because that's not the hero's journey. The hero's journey, I think a lot of people think it's all about winning, and it's all about you got to overcome something and then you've got it and then that's it. And that is that whole ego perspective, coming at this from material outcomes. But really at heart, the hero's journey is about elevating in consciousness and growing in a very organic and flowing way, which involves these circular peaks and troughs and also embodying something that is going to help the wider world. And I'll show you how Simone Biles did this in that documentary, or how the story was told, because there's 1,000 ways that story could have been told, and it could have been told in a way that didn't make us feel as elevated. And I really do think that it's a really great example of how to tell a story in a way that elevates and expands people rather than just brings them down with the problems. Particularly because it was a documentary, there are a lot of aspects where those lower levels of consciousness, the suffering points, she trained under a man who has been convicted of a lot of terrible crimes against women and girls. And if the story had shifted its focus to that, we would have had a very different experience and perception of the story. But I felt so empowered the way that this story was told, because it really did use this storytelling framework of not just the hero's journey, but expanding consciousness, using the hero's journey as an expansion of consciousness. And I'm going to read the patterns that I saw in those stages and how they were shown. So the lowest level of consciousness, according to David Hawkins, is shame and grief. Shame measures at 20 on the map of consciousness scale of human energy. If we look at the ordinary world stage in the hero's journey as being unconscious to the world's patterns and programs and how they are affecting us, that was really shown in the Simone Biles story. It's that autopilot, things that we just take for granted as truth when they're not necessarily. We saw her training, we saw her making it through to the Olympics, and the story didn't begin until we saw her higher self getting that call to adventure. So yep, she was an Olympian. She had made it to the Tokyo Olympics in 2020. That is an amazing feat. She was an incredible gymnast and athlete to make it to that stage. We hadn't even gone into any of that terrible stuff with the man who's now been convicted of crimes against women and girls. She had that call to compete at the Tokyo Olympics and she went. Now, the refusal of the call stage is such an important stage to understand on an unconscious and conscious level with storytelling, particularly with your personal story, if you're using this to recraft your narrative around an experience. Because the refusal of the call is when your unconscious programs and patterns show up via fear and suffering, basically. And fear and suffering are really low on the map of consciousness. Now, to move beyond that stage, and this is really where most stories stop, and this is why people don't change, don't grow in their lives, is because they stay in the unconscious. They stay in the ordinary world of the unconscious because the refusal of the call comes up via these outside forces saying, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, that's not the right thing to do, that's ridiculous. Or we can ask our higher spirit, ask ourselves, what can I, show me the way to change, please show me the way to overcome this. And that takes courage, which is 200. And that is when the mentor appears. And the mentor can be an outside human. It can be a spiritual message that comes to you in a dream. It could be your long lost father. It could be a loved one who you're close to. The mentor really functions to give you this gift of encouragement, belief, and show you that your willingness and your courage to go beyond the unconscious assumptions will be rewarded and is true and is good and is right. And in that Simone Biles documentary, I was so touched when she was at Tokyo, and I didn't really understand she had PTSD or some kind of trauma response. At that stage in the story, all we knew was that she was at the Tokyo Olympics, the pandemic had been declared, the world had been in lockdown, they were all there with their masks on. It was this totally strange experience of the Olympics where they couldn't hug and be in groups and have their community and their support network. And she was just absolutely having a nervous system shutdown. The refusal of the call would be the fact that every single Olympic committee member would have been absolutely appalled and disgusted by her walking off the stage. And she wasn't injured. No one had ever done that before. And this is why she's such a hero. There's footage of previous Olympic gymnasts who had that sickening feeling that, okay, if I keep going forward with this jump, this leap, if I do this one more time, I'm going to break something. But they were not allowed to listen to that. They were discouraged and just told to keep going, just do it anyway. But Simone Biles trusted that gut instinct, and she was her higher self there, and she accepted that message. But then we also saw that with her adoptive mother, who's actually her grandmother, I think, who she called, and all the professionals and the Olympic committee members were shocked and disapproving, and the general public is disapproving. But her mother/grandmother was like, yep, doesn't feel good. Okay, you come home. I support you. I will see you soon. And it just touches me so much. That was the mentor there. That was really that embodiment of you wouldn't see that mentor, you wouldn't have that message if it wasn't, it is really such a confirmation from spirit that you are on the right track to deny this next action. And she was following her heart, and it looked insane to the outside world, and the outside world disapproved of it. But her fairy godmother / her grandmother was like, no, yeah, I trust you. I love you. Come home. And this is that whole courage and love and higher states of consciousness coming from trust, acceptance, love, and courage, rather than fear, denial, anger, and pride. Pride is a lot higher than fear and shame, but pride is still a lower level of consciousness, because pride cannot stand failure. Pride cannot stand what she did, and what Simone Biles decided to do by walking off the Tokyo Olympics was coming from this level of trust in her higher self, her unseen guides, that makes no sense to the outside world and denies all of the reasons that pride has to exist. And the whole thing about the Olympics is it's built on pride. It's like your national pride. So then we saw she crosses the threshold. She makes that decision. She is going to be a hero. She is proactive, not reactive. And she decides to leave the Tokyo Olympics and to fly home. Most people, and they did, everyone was like, big mistake. Huge mistake. You're a failure. The whole country was chanting the word failure at her. I don't really know how famous people, Olympians, athletes, actors, survive that media barrage of messaging. It is toxic and poisonous. And this was her going through tests, allies, and enemies, and entering the cave, preparing to enter the cave. Those 3 stages of the hero's journey, really. Crossing the threshold, the special world for Simone Biles was going back to herself, following her intuition. That was not a common path. And going home, leaving the greatest athletic endeavor of all time to take a break. And just by asking for some space and some time to get herself together, that threw her into the special world of tests, allies, enemies, chants from the media and radio voices basically saying she was a failure, she was lazy, basically just trying to tear her down. And these are all messages of the ego, really. But she willingly chose that, and she was very conscious. And what I love about the story, and why it just shows me so much bravery on Simone's part, is that she accepted that. She heard it and she accepted it. She made decisions like, okay, I just cannot check social media. I have a panic attack when I see what's happening on social media. They're all sharing these terrible stories and saying these things about me. I'm going to see a therapist. I'm going to work through this trauma. I'm going to learn how to regulate my nervous system, and I'm going to accept myself through every stage of this process. And that was really the second act of this story for me. And the real ordeal here was her letting go of the attachments to what other people perceived from her actions. And that was the death of the ego there in the ordeal stage, and complete surrender. And you can see in that documentary that as she, goes deeper into the self-development work that she did in that time off, resting, recovering, seeing a therapist, having a way to articulate the story and bringing it into her consciousness of what had been going on for the years prior, and understanding how that affects the human body and the mind and our psychology from a performance perspective, the stress of having to testify on that global trial for the pedophile, how that had affected her. That was really the ordeal, and the death to her ego was just accepting that this was her journey and this was what she needed to process before she could have the reward of going back into the gymnasium. And it was her willingness to let go of her attachments and control of how she was perceived that is how I view this as such an empowering story of becoming conscious. And so after she'd been through the belly of the whale, she'd had the whole nation against her. How someone survives that on a psychological level is beyond me. It's just profound, the bravery and the grit. It also shows that the higher states of consciousness of love and acceptance from her family, from the people that she chose to surround herself with, her community and her support squad, the love that she felt and conscious choice that she put into that, rather than going and just trying to block it all out with destructive, distracting behavior, is why I see this as such a transformational and uplifting and inspiring journey. And she let go of her ego and she died to that previous version, that previous way that she was considered. And that you have died to something and really surrendered it when it doesn't hold that heat anymore. And you could tell that she had moved to the next stage, which is reward, because she started having joy when she went back to training with the other girls that she loved and that she'd known, her other teammates. And she started just going back and just doing the moves. The Olympic gymnastic feats that she performed are life-threatening for, most people who do them, and let alone if you're feeling confused and you don't have that mind-body-spirit connection dialed in and you don't have control and regulation of your nervous system. And she had to surrender to the fact that it was just not going to be possible for her to be doing her front flip, triple flip, whatever it's called, because she was so dysregulated. And she just went back to the basics. She just went back to, I'm just going to do 50 jumps on the trampoline this week. I'm just going to see my friends and go in there and try and have fun. And that was enough. That had to be enough. And that was the reward. That was the reward for letting go and complete surrender, was she had that love and returned to that love of gymnastics just for the joy and the fun of it. And she had that unity with her teammates. And so the road back to wholeness, the restoration of justice, was about restoring that joy and that heart and that love for the sport that this whole ordeal had. If she'd listened to her ego, if she'd told a story that was ego-based, would have taken from her. But instead, it was a journey of ascension. It was a journey of becoming more of who she was and a journey of inspiration. And so she traveled back, the road back to the ordinary world was that just going to the gymnasium and doing some jumps with her teammates and hanging out with them again. And then the resurrection, of course, is when she was able to do those higher risk jumps again and start to even consider competing. If they'd released that documentary after she had won 5 more world gold medals at the Olympics, it would have been a different story. But this was a journey of conscious ascension and wholeness and return to wholeness and growth. And that is why I love the fact that it was released before she'd even been to the Olympics. So that road back and that resurrection, the returning of life to her, was the return of the joy for the sport and the ability to surrender and let go, to accept that, she did feel terror. And she's so honest and truthful in this documentary. Before every triple flip, handstand, jump, whatever they're called, she said, I just feel really nervous. I just feel really nervous and hope that it works out. And just that level of honesty and courage and commitment to just being honest about it is really gutsy and brave, because the ego, if we consider the viewers and the people with stakes and their own agendas in her winning an Olympic title or winning for her team or winning for her country, the ego wants to have the outcome secure, but the ego is not interested in growth and expansion, because all growth and expansion takes letting go of outcome and trying something new. And the very nature of trying something new and not knowing how it's going to work out takes letting go. And the ego doesn't like that. So she returned with the elixir. And you know what? I love the return with the elixir stage of the hero's journey so much. I'd like to pose a question. If you are thinking about your story and thinking, who am I to do this, want this, try this, keep going, despite this setback? If you consider that your greatest challenge right now is a life-saving elixir, a transformational, potent nectar, how is it going to change the world? Embodying something that is going to help the wider world. Actualization is not just about you achieving a reward. It is about you sharing that elixir back in the ordinary world, elevating the consciousness of your community. If you'd like to know more about how to write your personal story using conscious storytelling methods, download the Hero's Journey Guidebook. It's free. The link is below. Or you can also sign up for the masterclass all about the Art of Memoir, which is on my website.